All right, and good day to all of my cavalry people. You are the game changers. You're the ones that are out for change, and you won't stop even if you've not made it to your goals just yet. You're out to mature. It's the Maturity Project. I'm your host, Chad Everbro Shears. Conversation I wanted to have today is about quarantining. And quarantining is not the sense of what we do for infectious disease, although you could use the structure and the conceptual strategies that are there for this conversation. But if you're new to this channel, I want to put something out there right away. And I've been told, trying to do this often, all of that. I'm not out to just be some talking head. I'm not out to be your guru. I'm not trying to be anything other than just, hey, we've got some stuff to talk about. We have some things that we can all develop in. We can mature through the process, and the majority of us what we need, because we're all so incredibly unique, and that we have so many incredible similarities, but yet what we're going through at this moment is unique to us because of the recipe it took us to get there. It's just, there's so much to it. It's like, we read books for a reason, right? Or at least we have as a species for a long time now. The internet, videos, audio, things like that have definitely taken its hold in the economy of information. Where once upon a time, all we had was the printed language, and that was a revolutionary thing at one point as well, from storytelling. So when somebody goes through something and they share that with you, what you get out of that is you get the unique perspectives they have from their life's accumulation of experiences, their genetic values that give them specific traits that are unique to them. And we all have that. We all have our genetic hand, because there's a myriad of different trait potentials that we have for who we are and our genetic potential. And there really is not anything that I've ever seen that tells me that one person could have all of the ideal traits and have none of the negatives or the undesirables. The fault of strength has the reality of weakness. So the way I see reality is that it's so incredibly large that not a single person could fully comprehend the totality of reality. But what we have is we have us as this very large living organism, if you will, the entire community of the species. And we communicate and share our experiences with each other, which gives us all a little piece of the reality that's the whole, right? The biggest piece of the reality that is there, which is the total of reality. We all get to communicate a little piece of what we get to know as reality, right? We have our unique experiences, we have the perspectives that we have the way that we're thinking at the moment that something is occurring, we have the way that we felt when that thing was occurring, we have our attachments to our goals, where you're physically uncomfortable, where you feel incredibly confident. There's so many things that are there when we go through something. And then we share that information with somebody. When we share it, it is not all of that information is a blip on the radar total, that's it. If you choose that it comes from someplace with such a large amount of data, so much experience associated with it, an accumulation of the success and fail rates of all the different things that they've tried has some degree of value in it. There are so many things that add up, because that success to fail rate increases your confidence or reduces your confidence when you speak with confidence. You see what I'm getting at is that when people share something with you, it is so incredibly significant in the sense of the total experience they've had. Now, that total experience, even speaking to somebody, is not one that they're going to be like, well, I just gave you something that I spent my entire life accumulating. We don't think that way either. What we do is we're like, hey, I shared that with you. And then there's something about that we expect, to have a comprehension of what we shared. And that could be the minimal debt expected from that sharing of knowledge. I'm trying not to be overly esoteric with this, but I've got to frame this in such a way to really bring the conversation into, the more desirable, which is that quarantining concept. So with every experience we've had a way of gauging our resources and to preserve and potentially increase our resources. When I say resources, I'm talking about your time, I'm talking about your attention, your knowledge, the community values of the relationships that you have, your money, your labor. There's a lot that goes into the resource category of what we expect in return. Most of us look at money as that's it, money. And then people seem to be mind blown whenever they realize that people that have accomplished accumulating a great deal of money talk about the greater resources of money, it's time. And people that are trying to pursue money, they're giving up all of that time so freely because there's not the tally of what that time has, which creates the potential for efficiency of your effort. And with your efficiency tells you if there's a more efficient way, what is it going to take in order for us to acquire that ability to do it that way? So that's the beautiful benefit of efficiency. You can gauge your effort and where it's at, but you need to know what progress should look like. There's a lot of that, right? And that's the feral world that we exist in, even though we're surrounded by people and society, and we're surrounded by a lot of us are robust society. We get a lot of people doing a lot of things and a lot of knowledge and information floating around, but we're still developing these experiences and these pieces of input about us, in our environment, and we're putting it together as a feral experience. It's like, I don't know, I just figured this out this way. You make up a meaning about it that has nothing to do with other people, in the sense of other people giving the feedback necessarily validated. So you're in this situation where you're thinking, well, you know what? That is, the sky's purple because of that thing that I went through. Well, if you've got, some sort of distortion in the atmosphere that gives you a purple hue as you're looking through something that has a light in the background of it enough to be able to identify that, then yeah, it could have been purple at that moment. But if you don't know how to share that information, people are like, yeah, you're crazy. And enough people tell you you're crazy, then you question whether or not you actually got to see or experience that. So then it goes back to what your confidence level is and your ability to perceive reality. If you do it in a feral way, it can be very challenging because it also means that other people don't necessarily agree with you, and most likely don't agree with you. They may agree on a more macro level, but on a micro level or a very detail-driven direction, they're like, I don't agree with that at all. But on the surface, yeah, this means that. Oh, I agree with you. But on that deeper level, like, I don't agree with that. I don't even want to be anywhere near agreeing with that. That's a deeper conversation anyway. So when it comes to coming up with a better version or a more structured and strategized version, is to accumulate this information in a way that we're self-evaluating. What we've gone through, is it true? Is it effective in what I know? Is it replicatable? To a degree, a lot of life has so many different details, variables, and all of that are on such a micro level you can't recreate it because you just don't know how, right? Like throwing that lucky throw into the trash can where you're like, damn, I didn't think I was going to make that. You could recreate that completely. The problem is that you don't have access or the detail awareness to the details that truly make the difference in that throw. You don't have you may not line your body up the same way, the amount of effort you put into it, the mechanics of it, was there, any kind of atmospheric direction, if there's any like air or something like that flowing around, your viewpoint, what you were thinking, how you were thinking, how present were you. There's a lot of that stuff that if you could get all of those things lined back up into the exact same situation, you would actually be able to recreate that throw. But the thing is that you don't have the amount of details. When you see people that are very, very high-end athletes that like pool, bowling, things like that, where you're like, wow, that's crazy. Darts, that's all of those things that people are lining up so much of the known details necessary in order to continue to be successful at that you're seeing that they have those details aligned with their degree of athleticism and their accuracy. That comes by processing all the data over time, getting it down into a pattern that is replicatable. We can do this with most of our life, but we don't have the depth of awareness to all of the details that truly make that difference. So I'm not trying to preach out something that the average person is going to have access to necessarily, because you have to really put in some depth of conditioning and detail conditioning in order to accomplish it. Oh, so we come up with a lot of feral stuff, even though we're surrounded by people, because we're not communicating in such a way that we create the replication of the events that we're going through and getting the information and the data. When we're looking at the bigger picture of reality, we're not sharing in such a way that we're making, real impactful change. So what I liken most of this to is, we have everything necessary to move our species forward in a significant leaps and bounds on a daily basis. And I'm not talking about technology's growth and the way that we're like, hey, this new microchip has this processing ability and blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that, although we could potentially have that same level of ability to move ourselves forward. The thing is that we're not taking the events and experiences that we go through on a regular basis, and we're not developing in a way that gives it teachability. What we do is we're like, it's not that important, right? We don't really teach the next generation very effectively. We have people that can't balance their budgets. How long have we been around where we've had an economy? We should all have already mastered managing your budget. There's a benefit for you not managing your budget, because other people that want your money have a way of getting you to, some organizations, businesses, governments, places like that. In my opinion, government's one of the biggest crooks and criminals in this. But you have them where they're better off that you're ignorant to managing your budget, because if you don't manage your budget well, your stress goes up, because you're regularly trying to figure out how to survive on a base level of resources at the most basic level, which is just having the amount of money necessary to keep the basic essentials together, so you're not without power or whatever. So we've got that as a challenge that we're left with, which is the ignorance in society. If you look at certain cultures, there are a lot of cultures that teach a specific set of things that are guaranteed to be passed down, or at least the opportunity is guaranteed to be passed down to the children, to the offspring, to the next generation. There are cultures that, they're incredibly good with money. There's cultures that are incredibly good at education. Like if you look at, and by the way, if you find any of this stuff racist, you can take that bullshit somewhere else. You're the one putting a blockade in your own ability to learn if you're doing that to yourself here. But in India, they value education and information very, very highly. And there's a lot of people in India that have, you get a lot of scammers and people like that call. You get those call centers or whatever, and they're scamming people. I'm not saying that is India. There are other countries that have the same problem. But with India, you find that they're with those groups of people. You'll see insightful things on the wall. You see things about Buddha or Krishna, or they have Gandhi. All these beautiful teachers or people that have taught great things, lessons for humanity, and they've got it on the wall. But yet they're calling to defraud people of their money and resources, to steal their identity and things like that. Well, the rationale to a lot of them, and this is because of all the videos I've watched on it and the research that I've done into this, which is they feel that if they can get one over on you, they're doing you a service as long as you learn from it, but they're not going to be the one to make sure you learn the lesson. They're just, you need to be taken advantage of. It's a very psychopathic and sociopathic and narcissistic trait value that it's coming from. It's a belief system structure that makes it okay to morally, harm somebody else to whatever degree they're harming them. The same as we have people that are caught up with the idea that, well, they have insurance, that's what insurance is for, not realizing the long-term consequences of exercising insurance policy relief, finance, and to distributions or for monetary distributions. Anyway, not to digress into that any further, it's just in that particular culture, and we see in a lot of Asian cultures, not just India, but other countries in Asia, where, you know, the joke is, if you're not a doctor by the time you're 8, you're a failure. You know, there's a couple of people that just they decline a bit, but, you know, like in Asian influencers that, you know, I forgot the guy's name, Steven something, but he's got a lot of it. He's like, emotional damage is one of his things. Funny itself. But, you know, there's no cultures that really push that. You know, you're actually at a very high level of playing an instrument before you're 10 years old, like, because that's a focus of growth and development and discipline cultures. You know, that's handed down. Not the culture supports the family units handing that down, and the society continues that process. So it's culture and society in the same category in this. But they're doing that. What I'm getting at is that you can do this in your own family. You can do this in your own life. You know, set out to make change. That's what I'm out doing with the Maturity Project. So you get this information, we put it together, right? We say, you know what, we have feral development even though we're surrounded by people. Prior to this channel being the Maturity Project, it was called Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And the base of that is what I'm speaking about now, which is you're surrounded by, you know, modern society. We're a first world nation as far as the United States. We have access to the internet. Information has never been easier to get a hold of. There's so much available, but yet we are still coming up with an understanding of reality that is in a very feral way. You know, you take slight of something that's not intended to be a slight. You get offended by problems that aren't really problems. You get into somebody else's life and create a fight for that person with somebody else because they've enrolled you in drama. You know, we have all of these problems that are really coming from a feral place, though, and being the wild spot, right? It's developed in some place that is not well organized and structured, and that comes up with a repeatable outcome. We come up with things that divide us more, not bring us together. Like I said earlier, we can move our species along very, very fast, very quickly, with astonishing results if we just started not only learning from the things we've been through, but teaching models of success for the things people go through, but understand you don't just teach a model and it bypasses the exercise of the event. So the event starts happening and the person knows everything about that event that tells them this is exactly how I need to behave here. And this is how I get the elicited outcome I'm after, because they don't have the experience to recognize where those things, if you were to have had the experience in the beginning, or have already had the experience and the event occurred, you can stop it right at that event because you are familiar with what the process is and how to get to the outcome as fast as possible, which is the more desirable outcome. You know how to do all of that, so it happens immediately. But you have the background experiences in order to give you that insight. By just teaching a lesson without the exercise itself, you can create something that actually has a trivial value, which is, I didn't even realize I was going through that thing that my parents had taught me my entire life, but they just spoke the lesson. They never gave a practical application and exercise for the lesson. What we want is to create the right kind of environment to teach the lesson properly. And that's what the Maturity Project's about as well. It's a big part of it. You create the right environment, or you scaffold around when the event occurs. For those that aren't familiar with scaffolding, is where, and I've said this in multiple videos, but this is the basic the general gist of it, is you scaffold is just like scaffolding a building. You build up around the person the success model, you know, and then you teach the success model while you do it with the person. And as they start showing proficiency in the areas that you're teaching them, you have to give them the exercise. They have to do it. You cannot do it for them. You need to do it with them and then guide them to do it on their own. And as you get to the point you understand they can do it on their own, which is not 100% do it on their own, because you want them to get to the point they have 100% on their own. They do that themselves. You get to the point where they have a high enough proficiency, 80, 90% proficiency, and then you pull back enough that you leave them that room for error, but they're not such a high level of error. that it makes them not use it anymore. It gets them to problem solve through their own process moving forward, which you're not just teaching them that of what it takes to be successful, you're teaching them formulas to be successful. So that's where you start pulling back. You get to the point you completely remove yourself like you would do with a scaffold building. You don't leave the scaffolding around the building indefinitely. It's there to build up whatever you need to build up for the structure or whatever it is that you're doing. And then you pull it away when it's done so you can give the beauty of whatever is done or the functionality of that thing without the scaffolding being a problem being in the way. Same concept with human beings and the development aspects. So as we're teaching generational lessons, which is the most desirable and ideal thing, this also how you build a great country, is you teach generationally the success models necessary to generate success in a country. In every aspect, it's a very dynamic thing. It's not this is one thing and you create success for the entire country, because you have so many other pitfalls along the way. You've got to be a very dynamic, holistic approach to success. Do the same thing with human beings as across the board. The Maturity Project's out for that. It's 8 different areas of maturity. We're not going to neglect anything. No. And if you're like, well, there got to be more than 8 areas of maturity. Yes, there are subcategories, but they all fall under 8 different categories. So there's subcategories to that. It's 8 pillars, if you will. So, all right. So as far as this goes, to give you enough information to at least say, hey, we all share fragments of reality. We do that through our experiences and the way we comprehend those experiences, and then the way that we communicate that to another person. We have a lot of feral background, which is the best way to understand you've gone through something, you've made meaning to it, you've used the narrative that you best understood about your experience in life, which is the narrative could be I'm a loser, I can't do well, I fail, I'm a winner, you can't beat me. Whatever the narrative is, it's the storyline that you tell yourself about the way you are in life and your place in life. Use all of that stuff, and then you compare that in conversation with somebody, and as you both compare it with each other, once you've done that, now you have those fragments of reality are bouncing off of each other, so that the data from those experiences can truly give you a better understanding of what's going on in overall reality, right? In the overall bigger scheme of things. Now you have the ability to see that, or at least you see more of it. Instead of going, you're wrong and this is why you're wrong, it's more like, I don't agree with that, but I want to understand why you see it that way, so that you can better comprehend that particular event, and it can illuminate something to you that you didn't see prior. And or you do that for them. It's not all about you either. The benefit is, if you do that for them, it also benefits you to get them to understand something different, whatever. So this is, once you understand those pieces, then you understand why people create disagreements or why people do things that are in that self-interested direction. It's not just that in order to qualify that. This is a way of accessing why people are selfish at times. When you quarantine, you're doing it for preservation of your resources so that you can continue to function. But it's like exercise. You got to get uncomfortable to a degree so that your body responds in the direction the exercise is eliciting, whether that's endurance, if it's strength, if it's losing weight, building muscle, stamina, whatever it might be that you're doing your conditioning for is the outcome you're truly out to achieve. So you're giving yourself those exercises. When you quarantine, you don't want to completely remove that person from your life. That's not what the point of quarantining is. Now, you might have the complete removal for now because you don't have the stability necessary. It's like your resources have been shaken up into a snow globe, and you don't know what the hell is going on. It's like your world's upside down. I've gone through this recently myself. This is an observation from my own experiences here. That you've had your entire world turned upside down, and it's like the major pillars that truly gave you value, identity, confidence in yourself, the things that are truly tenets of a good character build, the qualities that people are looking for whenever they're wanting to associate with somebody. They're looking for those variables about that, their confidence in their particular skill set, stuff like that. Mine's got all mixed up because of certain events that I've gone through. Now, you have to create, and for me, I will never completely remove somebody as an all-out complete removal. It's the quarantine concept. You might, if it's a person, that may be removed from any experience with me, but they're at enough of a distance that I still have observation of them. The reason why I say, you really should not fully remove somebody from your life, like why I'm so against this whole toxic people movement, all of that, because it's taught wrong. Quarantining is the best thing to do. When you quarantine, you remove them enough from your life that you still have the ability to observe them so that you don't lose the benefit of the behaviors, the traits that they have. You don't lose that. You have the ability to observe it. So here's the thing. When you realize somebody is selfish or self-interested and it's enough to destabilize or damage you, you have a marker on them. You have a flag that identifies them, and you can associate the traits and the behaviors that are the demonstrated problem that has made you flag them and believe that you need to remove them from your life. So what you've done is you've actually given yourself the ability to observe them. So with that observation opportunity, why would you take that away from yourself is a question to ask yourself. You know who that person is. You can remove them enough in your life that you can observe them so you don't lose the defenses that you have to develop in order to deal with those behaviors, the characteristics, the traits, that particular personality. Now, if you're dealing with somebody that truly is out to harm you, you do remove them, but you remove them far enough that they cannot harm you. But you don't have total annihilation of that person. You have them at enough of a distance that you have the ability to perceive. You have the ability to see those things and to gauge your response in a way that you do not need to have conflict. You do not even need to engage yourself with that person directly, especially when you're restabilizing or reestablishing yourself. So what I'm getting at here is if you look at the digestive tract, most of us are taught remove people, get rid of the toxic people, whatever. That's an eye for an eye kind of approach, because what you do is you abandon humanity whenever you remove somebody who's toxic. Well, eventually you run out of people, because if that behavior continues, everybody's going to become isolated in an island. But yet we're going to be surrounded by people, but you're going to have so many no-goes and no man's land for other people. The scarlet letter, if you will, because that's another version of what we're doing with the whole toxic thing, is the scarlet letter. We're creating an eye for an eye approach. And it's not, I'm getting revenge on you. It is you're taking the eye of another person so that you've made them less capable of seeing. People will do it to you because your traits and behaviors may not align with their reality of what they're experiencing. And that may cause them to say, well, you're being selfish, but the reality is you were not being selfish. You were doing something that you were up to that is associated with your goal. They wanted something from you. You weren't giving them. And you may not even have known it, but to them, they perceived that as selfish. It doesn't mean it's selfish. It's their attachment that you give them something that you're not. Now, and again, you don't even have to know that they're doing that, and they're saying that to themselves. You didn't give that to me, you're selfish. Because that's what narcissistic traits and behaviors do to us. We become very self-centered and blaming somebody else for being selfish when you in fact are being selfish. This is a weird thing that we do because we fall into these strange pitfalls where it's the easiest thing is the thing that we need to do. Remove toxic people from your life. Well, you get rid of a defense mechanism. So to go back to the digestive tract conversation, digestive tract is composed of 80% good bacteria, rough estimates, but still this is the last bit of literature that I came across. It's 80% good bacteria, 10% benign bacteria, meaning it's not good or bad, and then you have 10% bad bacteria. And the reason why you do not want to eradicate the 10% benign or the 10% bad is that you're coating your immune system with that bacteria, the bad bacteria, so that the world has that stuff in it. But if you don't have an immune system response to it, then your body will not be able to defend itself when that bacteria comes in, and it might get you sick enough that it hits your vital systems in a way that causes you ill health to the point of death. So your immune system puts that up ahead of time as a training process, like doing boot camp. It's like, hey, a virus is here, or well, in this particular case, a bacteria is here, and it's newer to us. So your body goes to the boot camp direction, which that bacteria, you do not want a new bacteria to have much space in your colon in order to grow. You want it to have limited space, so your immune system has the ability to deal with small amounts of it. But if you eradicated the 10 or the 20%, right, the benign and the bad, 10% benign, 10% bad, you actually give space for that new bacteria to really flourish, because it's got 20% space there, right? Well, technically, the good bacteria would eventually grow into that 20% void. But there's a lot more to it. Like, good bacteria has a slower growth cycle typically than the bad bacteria potentially usually has a rapid growth. Now, I'm not a doctor. I just read a lot. I'm very interested and very curious. But the point of it is, I'm liking the relationships you have with people and the things that you would quarantine to the same as the digestive tract. You don't eliminate it. You have someone in your life that has demonstrated specific traits that you say, I don't want more of that in my life. So from there, you now have a flag, a marker for that person, and you have the observed behaviors that now you can study. You can observe them enough that you'd come up with defenses to deal with that particular behavior, so that you are not ignorant to it and you're not defenseless to it. You want to have the ability to navigate that, because here's the other thing. If those traits were created in a feral way, that means that along the way, that person was abandoned by others. And if that person was abandoned by others, you're going to be abandoning that person yourself simply because of that observation. So, I'm not saying bring people that are harming you closer to you. I'm not saying that, quarantine you, move them at a distance that's safe for you. That might be removal for now, but it doesn't mean removal forever. My hope is, and that my desire is, by putting people into those quarantine spaces, is that, one is that I develop the skill sets and the abilities necessary not to have to really quarantine much in the future. This is for me and my training grounds, so that I get better and developed and mature, so that I'm not taking my insecurities and overreacting and punishing somebody else because they don't have the defenses developed in order to deal with their traits that are causing the problems that I perceive as problems. Because there's a lot of self-growth in this, and the goal and the desire is that I've put myself in such a distance that I can still influence the person enough to grow while I'm growing, and that one day in the future, we would be able to celebrate growth. We would be able to celebrate the victories that they have matured. Because you never know. This could be the person that you dated in the past that you absolutely were madly in love with, but it didn't work out then. But by quarantining that enough, who knows what the future would actually hold, what it would manifest. And it could very well manifest this new reality that is, that person learned what they needed to, and now they're, the two of you are rekindling, and it turns out that the thing that was the problem as a whole is completely completed and grown through, and now, that thing is no longer in the way. That could be one particular avenue or outlet. The thing is, what we do is, like, well, you screwed me over once, you're going to do it again. Well, guess what? You know the pattern of what that screwed me over is. They just, if they really earnestly want to grow, why punish them throughout the future of it? You just want to observe it, know that they've done it, they had a habit or tendency of doing it. If you understand it, you can talk your way through it or get to the point of full comprehension, especially when you can communicate with that person. Then you're learning what's necessary in order to develop with that person and to be able to hold them accountable for that behavior in case it starts coming up again. Or if you see similar patterns from that behavior, because that is common of behaviors, is that they lend themselves to new experiences, even if it's outside of that scope of the formula that they use for success, grafts into. the next thing. Like if somebody's used to lying to somebody, they'll lie through multiple different mechanisms in order to accomplish something. But if they learn the consequences of lying, they may actually reevaluate and then overcome that by realizing the cost of lying and the benefits. So they can be like, I don't want to lie anymore. I'd rather bypass all the nonsense and go straight to the point. There's a lot of things that can come out of growth. And that's the goal with this, is to help get that person to that point. So quarantining for your own level of safety, but not to completely banish or exile the person from your life in a way that you don't learn from their behaviors enough. Again, they don't even need to know that you have the ability to observe. And it doesn't mean bring yourself back either. If it is, again, back with that, the love example, the love of your life example, if you know that being around that person or talking to that person seems to bring you right back emotionally to where it was all the problems that you're having and all of that, and you needed to break away, it's like quitting smoking. You give yourself enough of a distance that you're not tempted, and then whenever that problem is no longer there, the emotional attachment or the desire that those emotions continue to be fostered or nourished, you get enough of a distance, you can observe them and get to the point of possible contact and communication. But you've given yourself enough distance and time that you're aware of yourself. So if you start going down that path again, you can put a stop to it or put some sort of, put barriers in it or create workability with it so that you're not drawn back into the pattern again. Goal is to break the pattern, and then you create a new one. That's the goal. So the abandonment of other people by exile, I'm not an advocate for that. I'm more for the quarantine approach. Create the right place to put somebody in a way that they're not causing harm, but they're not removed. Remember, if they've caused you problems in the past, you have a flag marker on them to understand who they are and their behaviors, so that it's not somebody else's new and all of a sudden they exhibit those behaviors, but they've already got themselves in a position that can cause you harm where it feels like it's repeating. You're not likely going to repeat if you take the quarantine approach if you go the right way with the quarantine approach. So this is what quarantine is about. I've given a lot of conversations, 37 minutes of this, to really get down to that point. Quarantining is not saying, I accept that you've done this, do it to me again. Screw me over harder next time, please. It's not that. It is getting enough distance that you can still grow. It's also understanding people do what they do because that's just what they know to do. And it's not to punish them indefinitely. But there is a lesson to be learned. And usually in relationships, when there's that thing that somebody seems to need to learn, we usually use a form of punishment or distress or pain in order to try to teach a lesson to that person. Not out of spite, but out of the desire for growth. I hope that you become a better person. Those kind of conversations like that. You're not doing it spitefully to hurt them. Because that pound for flesh thing will leave us all skin and bones, leave us all bones. Same as, an eye for an eye leaves the world blind. I don't want to remove people. I don't want to cause that much harm in people's lives either. But I do want to create enough distance that I can navigate successfully. So hopefully this makes things more than clear than clear as mud. Again, my thing is insights. Let's talk about things. Let's create new parameters. If you feel like you're painted into a corner, insights give us the opportunity and ability to get out of that corner that we're painted into. So, it's when in doubt, do something, right? Anyway, all right. Well, that's it for today. This is the Maturity Project. I'm your host, Chad Everett Broshear. Share this video with people in your life that you really want to make a meaningful conversation with. Conversation for change. We've got a lot of opportunity ahead of us. Every day is a new opportunity for something. And success is not just measured in one thing. It's measured through multiple things. It's just what is it to you? I'm really looking forward to the growth. I want to get up to something. Get up to it with everyone. We can create so much. We just got to put our mind to it and get to it. The lessons are there. Every bit of our hardship, those are lessons. You just have to figure out how to learn it so that you can come up with a better outcome. So, all right, that's it for today. This is the Maturity Project. Path to Hell is paved with good intentions. We're not going to create those. We're going to create just the path to paradise, man. But it's through it's through some growth, man. We got to mature. So. All right, till next time, let's get to it. And yeah, that's it. Let's go.